and welcome to this week's edition of Retire Well, the show designed to help you retire well in all aspects of your life. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and joining me here in the studio is Kevin Bucher. He is the owner and a financial advisor at Citizen Advisory Group. Kevin, my friend, great to be here with you this week. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's great to be back on the show.
Well, I know you put together another fabulous show for our viewers. We have a lot of you that have been watching, and if you're new to us, welcome. We're so glad that all of you are here. But today's show was birthed out of the most common questions that Kevin and the team of Citizen Advisory Group are getting when they come in to meet with the team to get help with their retirement planning. And you know, it's interesting, Kevin, there's a lot of rules out there, there's a lot of regulations, which can often produce a lot of confusion. So that's why we have a whole list of questions here, and we're going to try to get through as many of them as we can.
Yeah, so this show kind of started out just kind of, like you said, common questions we were getting, and then it started to build this recurring theme of the questions largely centering around Social Security and Medicare, because lots of different nuances within both of those programs.
Yeah.
So yeah, today's show we're going to try to maybe answer a lot of those questions. It's complex.
Yep.
So anytime I think you're talking about government programs, there's complex. So you know, I've done a lot of training in the area of Social Security. I used to give Social Security presentations. I know you used to do that as well.
Yes.
So funny, it's been several years ago now. I was on a show where I was being interviewed, and on my title within the show, it had my name, and underneath it said I was the Vice President of Social Security.
Oh, did it?
So I can assure you that is not accurate. But so that's kind of been a joke in our office for a while. That anytime there's a Social Security question, they go to the Vice President of Social Security.
Yes. Oh, that's a great story, though. How fun. I hope someone got a screenshot of that for you.
I actually hope they didn't.
Right. Well, let's start off with this comprehensive list of questions that we have. Again, these are common questions that folks have been asking. We're sure that you have some of these same questions as well. So you ready to get to it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So first on our list, when it comes to Social Security, how is your benefit calculated?
Okay, so how is your benefit calculated? You know, I wish that I could give you a very one-sentence answer and say that, but so here we go. It's based on your highest 35 years of earnings. So, you know, sometimes people are familiar with a pension where they might look at your highest 3 or highest 5 years worth of earnings. Social Security is actually going to look at your highest 35 years of earnings, so it's a pretty long wage history they're looking at. They then take that 35-year history, they adjust for inflation. So your earnings in 1980 were probably a lot lower than they are today because wages have inflated. So they adjust for inflation. They then take that highest 35 years of inflation adjusted earnings, break it down into your monthly amount, which is called your AMI, your average indexed monthly earnings. They take that average month then, and it's through 3 different bend points that determine you get 90% of the first, you get 32% of the next, you get 10% of the next. So they run through that very complicated formula to tell you what your full Social Security amount is. So there you have it.
Yes.
35 years, break it down to your average month. Your average month then runs through this formula, tells you what your full Social Security amount is. And
let me add a sub question in there. If someone hasn't worked for 35 years, then what gets calculated into the equation?
Yeah, they're still going to calculate your highest 35 years. So if you only have 20 years worth of work earnings, you're going to have 15 years worth of zeros that go in to calculate your average.
Right.
So as a former teacher, math teacher in particular, so when someone missed an assignment, for example, and got a 0, that really plays havoc on that average, right?
Right.
So, you know, zeros can have a big impact to your benefit, but you're still going to get a benefit.
Right. All right. Well, moving on, because I know we could spend forever just on that one. As you said, the calculation is very complex, right? But this follows right up with it. How does my filing age affect my benefit amount? This is a good one.
Yes, because this is a part that you actually do have some control over when you decide to file for your benefits.
Right.
So you're first eligible at the age of 62, but everybody has a full retirement age, which is determined by your year of birth, right? So if you were born in 1954 or before, your full retirement age was 66. So that's basically when you would have been eligible to get your full amount based on that formula we talked about. They have now started to raise that. So if you were born between 1954 and 1960, full retirement age is working its way up to 67. And then if you were born in 1960 or after, it is 67. So at 66 to 67, that's your full retirement age. That's when you get your full amount. So I say all that to now maybe answer your question was how does your filing age affect that? So if you file at your full retirement age, you get 100% of your benefit. If you file before your full retirement age, they're going to reduce your benefit for the rest of your life. So for example, if I filed at 62 and my full retirement age was 67, I'm going to take a 30% reduction in my Social Security benefits, not just for this first year of retirement, but for the rest of my life.
Right.
But I also don't have to take it at my full retirement age. I could wait as high as age 70 and earn what's called delayed retirement credits. And in that instance, I'm going to get 24% more.
Right, because it goes up 8% per year for every year that you wait.
Yes. So if I take it early, it's a 30% reduction. If I wait until 70, it's a 24% increase. And then every month in between is somewhere in between that range.
Right, which can propose a very fun question of trying to determine when the right time is for you. But there's really no way to determine that without coming in and sitting down in the financial planning environment to figure out the ideal time for each individual.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that because filing for Social Security is one of the key decisions because for most retirees, Social Security is the foundational piece to your retirement plan. So we have to make sure that we're making the right decision when it comes to Social Security for you and your family. And I know that that decision is probably different than the decision that the individual at the coffee shop that maybe did something different or your neighbor. The right thing for you to do is going to be very specific to you and your individual situation.
Absolutely. Well, moving on down this list of Social Security questions, this next one is, what is the Social Security's earnings limit? So that kind of is twofold. What actually are we talking about with the Social Security earnings limit? What is it? Why does it matter to you? And what the amount is?
Yeah, so what is it? Well, what it is if you do file for your Social Security before that full retirement age of 66 to 67, it doesn't mean that you can't continue to work, but they're going to put a limit, an earnings limit, on how much you're allowed to make while you're drawing that benefit. Again, this is only for those that are filing before their full retirement age.
Right.
Because if you're full retirement age or after, you can draw your benefit and work and kind of double dip. But if you're not your full retirement age, they're going to put a restriction on how much you're allowed to make. And if you go over that, they're going to start withholding the benefits that they're paying. So the limit, part two of the question, is somewhere around $22,000 in 2024. It's a little bit more than that. So if you're still working in a full-time capacity and you're making more than the $22,000 a year, you really need to be aware of where that earnings limit is and how it would impact what you'd be able to get from Social Security.
Right, because of those givebacks. That's what happens.
Yes. So you're basically going to draw a benefit that they're not going to give you anyway.
Right. Yeah,
So,
not a great situation. A lot of folks aren't aware of that, so it's important to make that known for sure. All right, next up, another common question is, what is a spousal benefit? Let's talk about that one.
okay, so it's a lot like it sounds. It's a benefit that you might be able to get as the spouse of a worker, and it used to be a lot more important than it is today because of some rule changes.
Right.
But the spousal benefit is a benefit that has nothing to do with my individual work record. It has to do with my spouse or ex-spouse's work record, and maybe that'll come up in the questions as well. So basically, as a spouse, I am eligible for 50% of my spouse's Social Security benefit as the spouse. So you have to look at what is your benefit based on your own work record compared to what 50% of your spouse's work record is, and then you would get the higher of the two.
Right.
So spousal benefits, there used to be some really unique strategies where couples could bounce back and forth between the two benefits. They've largely eliminated that, not completely in some cases, so we'll get to that. But here's where it is important. If you were a worker that had a limited work history, or maybe you never worked outside of the home, and you don't have your own Social Security benefit, well, that doesn't mean that you're not entitled to anything, because you would be eligible for that spousal benefit then, which again starts as being 50% of your spouse's work record.
Right. So the numbers have to be crunched to figure out what calculation is going to benefit you the most, for sure.
Yes, there's a lot that goes into this decision. You know, we have Social Security planning software that allows us to input some of the basic numbers, and then it runs for us all the different simulations of when and how you could take your benefits together with your spouse.
Yes.
And it might sound like there's only a few calculations to do there, but there's 1,000 different ways that you and your spouse could take your benefits. So that software has the horsepower to run that for us, as opposed to me trying to do it by paper and pencil.
Right.
I like math and I'm good at math, but I'm not gonna compete.
You're not going to run all 1,000 permutations, combinations, right? That's why we have the software, because it does get very complex very quickly. And this is one of those things I think it's important to point out, that the Social Security Administration is allowed to give you information, but they are not allowed to give you individualized, personalized advice based on your situation. The only way you're going to be able to get that kind of personalized advice is by meeting with someone like the team of Citizen Advisory Group. And this is why you offer that complimentary written financial plan, and as part of that, engage in the Social Security planning piece.
Yes, and I would add to that, it's not just they can't give you advice, they can answer your questions. So you have to know the questions to ask, and that's where we can really help.
Right.
So for callers from today's show, we are offering a written financial plan. Social Security is a huge component of that, but having a written financial plan really helps just make better informed decisions for you as you go through retirement. And when you make better decisions, you will get better outcomes. So we can help you navigate through that, but we need you to take the first step by calling the number on the screen today and scheduling your complimentary consultation for that written financial plan.
Wonderful. Kevin, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, to claim your complimentary written financial plan, all you need to do is call that number on the bottom of your screen, 866-630-1675. Or if you'd rather connect online, we've got you covered. Simply pull out your smartphone, and if you open up that camera app, you can point, click, and scan the QR code that you see there down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. That will take you over to a landing page, ask you a few short, simple questions, and then a member of the team from Citizen Advisory Group will reach out to connect with you to schedule your complimentary meeting to receive that complimentary written financial plan that way as well. We've got a lot more questions to get to. Who knows, we might be answering one of yours. Stay with us. We'll be back after this.
Imagine not having to face your retirement with the same old corporate solutions as everyone else. In these economic times, you deserve a fresh perspective that includes a personalized retirement income plan, investment portfolio analysis, and tax map from an independent fiduciary advisor whose focus is on you. Call the number you see here to schedule your complimentary review right now. I think we recognize as a firm that thought of meeting with the financial advisor and discussing your personal finances causes some anxiety.
It can be kind of overwhelming or intimidating for some.
It's similar to the emotions I have about the dentist. I recognize that going to the dentist is really important, and I want better dental health. I don't look forward to going to the dentist. But what I have found is it ends up not being as bad as what I thought. I think that relates really well to those emotions that people have about meeting with the financial advisor, that it might cause some anxiety, but it wasn't nearly as bad as you thought. And when it's all said and done, you feel so much more comfortable about the steps you took and the financial security that you're building for yourself.
We have a beautiful home office in Perrysburg that we built with intentionality. We want to try to take down those walls to make it home. When you come into our living room, the fireplace and couches, and when people come in, we want to have that comfort level of family and trust and open communication, just all the things that are important to be successful.
Welcome back to Retire Well. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, here with Kevin Bucher, owner and financial advisory at Citizen Advisory Group. Today, we are going through an extensive list of Q&A of different questions that folks have been asking, the most common questions and concerns folks have had when they've come in to meet with Citizen Advisory Group for the first time. And a lot of these questions, as you shared earlier, center around both Social Security and Medicare. And those two things alone are huge consequential decisions for someone's retirement. It can be very confusing, so it's no wonder we've got a long list of questions, right?
Yes, and we got through 4 so far.
Yes. So. We might need to do this over a couple shows, right?
Yes.
Well, I want to go back. We were talking about spousal benefits, and you mentioned something as it relates to Social Security spousal benefits, that someone could potentially be also collecting off of an ex-spouse. And I find that there's a lot of confusion. A lot of folks don't even know that that's an option. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so the marriage had to be a qualifying marriage. So basically basically that means that you had to be married for 10 years to be eligible to draw off of the ex-spouse. But you have all the same rights as a spousal. And I get questions on this all the time about, well, but my ex is remarried. Well, that doesn't matter. So you could have, if you had, an individual had 3 qualifying marriages that were 10 years each, well, all 3 of those spouses could be drawing off of that in one individual worker's record. So we have the spousal benefit,
right,
which is what you'd be eligible to draw off of a spouse that is still living. So current or ex, if certain conditions were met.
right.
But then we also have the survivor benefit, which is different. So survivor benefit is for widow and widowers. And so it is basically going to look at what is the deceased, what was their benefit amount, and you have the option as the survivor to step in and take over their benefit if it was higher than your own.
Right. So again, you have to run the numbers to see what would be the better situation for you. But one thing I think it's important to point out with the whole ex-spouse conversation as well is that your ex-spouse will never be notified if you are collecting off of him or her. A lot of folks are thinking, oh, I don't want to do that because I don't want them to be involved in my life. They will have no idea. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's been many, many years ago now. I was doing a presentation on Social Security, and an individual was just adamant that, no, my ex, we talked about it in the divorce, they cannot draw from my Social Security. We did that in the divorce. And I don't think would be any possible legal way that you could stop someone from getting a spousal benefit that was entitled to, whether it was in your divorce proceedings or not, because those two things are completely disconnected.
Right. Well, going back now to survivor benefits, sorry, I feel like we're jumping around a little bit, but hopefully it's staying clear about the spousal benefits and now moving into survivor benefits. What if someone remarries? Are they still eligible to receive their survivor benefit?
So it depends. So you can remarry, but you have to wait until you're 60 years old to remarry. So, for example, if you were widowed at a young age and that you would be eligible to draw that survivor's benefit as early as 60 years old, but not if you remarried to someone, and were currently married, by the way, before the age of 60. So I can tell you there's been numerous occasions when I met with a couple that did marry not knowing that they were entitled to these survivor benefits, and sometimes that marriage happened literally 1 month before they reached the age that they would be able to draw that survivor benefit off of the deceased spouse.
Right.
And why that is really important, we kind of mentioned this earlier in the segment, that the Social Security rules used to allow some pretty advanced strategies for couples where you could bounce back and forth between your own retirement benefit and the spousal benefit. So the Social Security Administration changed some of those rules, but they didn't change them for survivors.
Yeah, because I see that's another question on here about what is the survivor benefit switching strategy?
Yeah, so that'd be that's kind of the term that we use for the advanced strategies where you're using a switch. So I'll use a client example on this one. So an individual I met with about 4 years ago named Lenore. So Lenore was a widow, so unfortunate she was widowed, and she was actually engaged to be married. And so we talked about her eligibility for the survivor benefit at some point. Now, she was still working, so subject to that earnings limit, but she was also past the age of 60, so she was allowed to remarry and not lose the benefits of the survivor. So the only thing we had to worry about for her in order to start drawing those benefits was she wasn't her full retirement age yet. But we knew when we had that conversation that when she did retire, she was going to be able to start by drawing her Social Security survivor benefit off of the deceased spouse and allow her own Social Security retirement benefit to continue to earn those delayed retirement credits that we talked about earlier in the show. And by doing that, she was going to be able to get money in her pocket from Social Security when she retired, but also let her own Social Security benefit grow to its maximum amount. And that's what I mean by a switching strategy. So at the age of 65, and I just did a review with Lenore, and she told me, I knew 4 years ago the exact day I was going to retire, so because I was able to do this Social Security switch. So she's filing for the Social Security survivor, getting some income from Social Security, but letting her own benefit grow up until the age of 70, where she will get the highest amount possible for the rest of her life. So that's what I mean by a switch. She's starting on her survivor benefit, switching to her retirement benefit later, and taking taking advantage of both of those benefits.
Wow, I'm so glad you were able to share that illustration and that example, because again, I think there's a lot of strategies out there that folks aren't aware of that they could utilize if it applies to their situation.
Yeah, and you mentioned this earlier, two things. One, no one from the Social Security office is going to pick up the phone and notify you that you're eligible for these benefits. And number two, even if you went in and were asking for advice, they're not legally allowed to give you advice.
Right.
So you have to know the questions to ask in these areas so that you can get these outcomes that you're looking for.
Yes. Well, I know that you talked about, the Social Security software that you're able to utilize for folks when they come in and receive their complimentary written financial plan from you and the team. What exactly are folks going to receive from a Social Security standpoint? Is there an additional report? Talk a little bit about what information they're going to be able to garner from that meeting.
Yeah, so one of the things we provide for our clients is a Social Security comparison report. So again, the software is going to run thousands of different scenarios on when and how you should take your Social Security, and we can then break that down into a couple different strategies where we can show them side by side. So usually we're looking for strategies that are going to provide the best long-term benefits, but also strategies that don't have a significant upfront cost in the waiting, right? Because when you wait, there's a cost to that. The cost is you're not collecting the Social Security benefits when you were eligible to do so, but there's a long-term benefit. So we need to kind of present side by side these strategies so you can see the pros and cons of both.
Yes, for sure. Well, and I think that's going to be really a huge advantageous thing for folks who maybe haven't yet thought through all these different scenarios. And there's never been a better time. I mean, you might be nearing Social Security age. You might be wondering this question of when should I file? When's the right time for me? What of these strategies might apply to me in my life? This is why we invite you to pick up the phone and call that number on the bottom of your screen to come in, and for no cost, no charge, no obligation, just have this conversation, receive that complimentary written financial plan, and see what would be best for you. That number to call is 866-630-1675, or again, you're welcome to scan that QR code and that will get you connected as well. We'll be back with more of the most common questions that the team of Citizen Advisory Group are receiving right after this.
Whether it's time with your grandkids, travel, or finally doing what you've always wanted, retirement is about having the time to live life on your schedule. At Citizen Advisory Group, we build comprehensive retirement plans customized to your individual goals. Whether you're still preparing, taking your first steps, or have been on the path for years, our trusted and caring professionals are here to help you manage the risks and navigate the challenges on the road to your financial future. Citizen Advisory Group, your retirement journey begins here.
We know the market is going to get worse from here. This is the biggest monthly decline in 10 years. People's 401ks took a major hit.
Well, my investments are tanking. My retirement isn't going as planned. I can't believe I let my kid talk me into buying crypto. I mean, what is that anyway?
This was the fourth worst contraction in history.
So how are you two doing?
Your financial future doesn't have to be uncertain. I'm Kevin Bucher of Citizen Advisory Group. If you have amassed a nest egg, it's time for a financial advisor to help you reach your retirement goals. This is one of the greatest tax windows in history. Now is the time to take advantage of this tax discount while you can. We specialize in retirement planning, tax mitigation, legacy planning, and so much more. Plan your retirement right. Call now for your own complimentary portfolio review and written financial plan.
Welcome back to Retire Well. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, here with Kevin Bucher, owner and financial advisory at Citizen Advisory Group. And we are talking today, working our way through some of the most common questions that folks are asking when they come in to meet with the team of Citizen Advisory Group, specifically about Social Security. We've got a whole long list here. We've done pretty well, right, making our way through them, but there's no shortage of questions that folks have, for sure.
No, they all take a little time because the answers are generally not straightforward yes or no questions.
Exactly.
And I think if you do have questions around these topics and you're getting yes or no, because oftentimes the answer is that it depends, and then you go through the circumstances. So
right.
I would actually be a little skeptical if you were getting very quick, short answers, because it depends on multiple factors.
Absolutely, for sure. Well, the next question on the list relates to Social Security is, what is the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset. This is a big one. That does affect a lot of folks.
It does. It affects a lot of folks, and to try to save time, we didn't pick the best question for this because it takes a little time. But so we see this all the time in our area. So basically, public employees, whether they're school teachers in Ohio that do not pay Social Security, they pay into the STRS retirement system. Police and fire who do not pay Social Security tax, they pay into the Ohio Police and Fire Pension Fund. Public employees who are under OPERS, so they're not paying the Social Security tax. So, but we often find that that wasn't their whole work history. So they did have years where they were working under the Social Security system, and they did that long enough that they earned a Social Security benefit. So what the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset are, they are adjustments to those individuals' benefit formula that reduces the benefits that they're going to receive. So in a short version of this, so workers that are working under a public retirement system that are not paying into Social Security, those are what are called non-covered pensions, and they have an adjustment then that is applied back to your Social Security benefit. You're not going to get what it says on your statement that you're going to get in those instances.
Right, and that's important to know and be prepared for sure.
Yeah, because you wouldn't want to be expecting to get a $2,000 a month benefit only to find out that it's going to be reduced by $500 and you're only getting $1,500 a month, for example.
Yes. Well, I think we have time for one more question, and this is one that's a huge one. Again, we'll answer it as best as we can with the time we've got. Will I pay tax on my Social Security benefit? And there's a lot of confusion around this because when Social Security was created, we were told that it would never be taxed. Well, fast forward, it could be that up to 85% of someone's Social Security benefit could be taxed. So how does someone know and figure out if they're going to be subject to that?
Oh, there's a lot into that question, but I do get a lot of questions on this, and usually it's just the questions are we're not getting the right question because a lot of times people say, well, what tax rate am I going to pay on my Social Security? Well, Social Security doesn't have its own individual tax rate. The question about Social Security is how much of your Social Security benefit will be taxable? It will be taxed at the same rate as whatever income brackets you're in, but how much of it is going to be taxed, and that is based on a formula called the provisional income. So you have to first calculate your provisional income, which is half of your Social Security plus wages, 401k withdrawals, capital gains, dividends, and interest. All of that plays into your provisional income, and the higher your provisional income, the more of your Social Security benefits that will be taxed. And I'd love to tell a quick little story. So we just had a meeting with a couple that they are not currently in a tax bracket, but what we were able to show them is the next $5,000 you take out of your IRA account, what the tax impact of that'll be is not just the tax on that $5,000, but it's going to cause taxation of more of your Social Security. So that's what we have to know and be aware of.
Yes, and this is why you have to look at all these things from that comprehensive, holistic point of view, because how you make a decision in one area is going to affect all the others, right?
Yes, so we're offering a complimentary written financial plan from callers of today's show that is going to encompass all of the areas of financial planning.
Wonderful. Kevin, thank you so much. This time always flies by so fast. Thank you for joining us. Again, that number to call to claim your complimentary written financial plan, 866-630-1675. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time here on Retire Well.